Do you have a condition called IDD? Now, my hope for you as you're watching this video is that before the video is over, you will have been able to determine if you indeed do have IDD. And not only will you be able to identify whether you have IDD, you'll also be able to cure it, right? I have high hopes for this video in this short little video. But let me explain that. What is IDD? Well, IDD stands for a condition that affects a vast majority of people, and it's called intention deficit disorder. I know I made up the term, but it's a very real condition. Intention deficit disorder. Now, I didn't say attention deficit disorder. I mean intention deficit disorder. So what is an intention deficit disorder? Well, quite simply, an attention deficit disorder is simply a deficit of intention, meaning a lack of intention. Do you know, this is the $1,000,000 question here, do you know what an intention is? Are you aware of what an intention is? Yeah, an intention is probably one of the most powerful things that most people think they understand, but really do not have a grasp on it. It's actually quite simple. An intention is different than a goal, right? If we may have an intention to do something or intention for something, but it's very different than setting a goal. See, a goal is something that you do. It's a plan, something you want to accomplish. Goals are fine, but an intention is not like a goal. An intention is actually much more powerful than a goal. Because if you truly set an intention correctly, which is not that complicated, if you set an intention correctly, whatever you set an intention to do, have, or be will absolutely come to fruition. Now, I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to experiment with it, right? To experience it for yourself by experimenting with it. Now, I'll get to that here in a second. But an intention is simply, if I were to give it a definition, I would simply say an intention is focused awareness. That's all it is. It's focused awareness, where you focus your awareness at a certain point. And then life, the created universe, the divine, it doesn't really matter how you, what words or terminology that you use to describe this. When you set an intention, literally, it's like the universe, life itself it goes to work for you. It becomes kind of like your servant that brings about your intention. I know this sounds crazy. I know it sounds too good to be true, but I have discovered that is exactly the case. And I'll give you an example of an intention as opposed to a goal. A goal is something that you, like I said, it's something you want to accomplish, and then you're trying to focus on how do you bring it about, right? What are the steps I need to take to make the goal happen, right? This is not the way it is with intention. And intention is very subtle, and it involves the imagination. It's literally focusing your awareness, the point of your imagination, towards a certain finished outcome, a finished product, a state of being that you want to experience. That's really what it is. Now, let me explain what I mean by this. And my first time ever encountering the concept of intention actually blew my mind. And I want to tell you a little story that I think will illustrate just how powerful and intention is, right? So several years ago, I was going through a really transformative period of my life. I had been through a lot of life change. I'd moved to a new location. And there were a couple of people. There was actually one particular person in my life at that time who I kind of saw as an advisor for me, somebody I looked up to, somebody that I really learned a lot from over the course of time. And I was traveling back to the city of Nashville, which was somewhere I used to live many years ago. And I was traveling back there on a trip. And so I was going to connect with my my friend who was just a really instrumental figure in my life at that time. And I called him up and I said, hey, I'm coming through your city. I'd love to get together. There's a lot of stuff percolating. I'm learning a lot of new things. I'd love to run some things past you. in a very introspective part of my life. I was really going through a lot of healing, a lot of development, interpersonal development, lots of things going on. So I went back to the city and I ended up meeting up with my friend, and we were going to meet at this little place to have some drinks and just to really have some time together to talk and to chat and catch up. So we got together at this place, and he asked me, when I was on my way there, he said, "Hey, I got a buddy of mine, a good friend of mine, that I'd really love for you to meet." It's somebody I didn't know, but he said, I really think that you guys have a lot in common, and I think that there's probably some things that I think you would appreciate about him. It would be okay if I invite him to come along and hang out with us. And I said, absolutely, man. Any friend of yours is a friend of mine. I'd love to meet him. And so we ended up getting together, and I met my buddy, and we were sitting there having a conversation, catching up. And he said, my friend's coming. He'll be here in a few minutes. And probably about 10 minutes later, this guy comes walking in, the little restaurant bar kind of place that we were hanging out. And he comes over, introduces himself to me, and he sits down. And I had a sensation, not that I really knew him. It wasn't like he was familiar to me, but I had a sensation that I was familiar to him in some way. It's kind of a strange feeling, but I felt very personally, I felt like this guy knows me in some way. He just seemed to know me, and I didn't know him, and I didn't never met him, and so we had an amazing time. We had an amazing conversation, and as the minutes turned into hours, we spent several hours just contemplating things, talking about things, postulating things, and just really learning from each other and bouncing ideas off each other. And the more this guy who I had just met talked, the more he was like speaking to my soul. It was just hard to mistake that. And as he was speaking, he was bringing clarity. A lot of things I had not been clear about in my own personal life, things that I was, ideas or concepts of the world that I was rethinking. Every time this guy would talk, there would be such insight that would come, and I could feel my mind literally expanding, and I felt even some healing happening deep in my being as he's speaking. It's almost like he knew exactly what I needed to hear, how I needed to hear it. And it was almost like he knew me. He knew what I was going through. And it got to the point where it was so over the top and so obvious. I called it out. I just said, hey, I was like, hang on. And I said, I'm not really sure what's going on right now. I said, I just met you. We've been having a great conversation. We've been talking for the last, couple of hours. But everything you're saying is like bringing such clarity to me. It's like you know me, and you know my situation, even though I haven't shared my situation with you, and I didn't. And not even my other friend who I was meeting there knew what I was going through in different aspects of my life at that period. But this guy is almost like he knew, and he was speaking right to these situations. And I said, I don't know how you're doing this, but you're really speaking my language. You're really bringing a lot of clarity to me. You're helping me. I've just never had a conversation quite as powerful as this before. How are you doing this? I just had to know. And he goes, oh, that's easy. I said, how was it easy? He said, before I came in tonight, when I was sitting in my car, I pulled up here out front, and I sat in my car, and I closed my eyes. And I got still in my being, and I asked my deeper, higher essence within me, the divine essence that's living within me. This is how he said it. He said, I tapped into it, and I just got quiet, and I listened. And I began to visualize in my imagination how this night was going to go with you. Meeting a new friend. I always want to, he said this, he goes, I'm always wanting to be of service. I always want to help people. I always want to speak and bring value to people. So I sat in my car and I visualized how this conversation was going to go. And I pictured this very moment where you're feeling satisfied, you're feeling enlightened, you're feeling served, you're feeling all these things. He said, I sat in my car and visualized you having this experience. Now, I didn't know how it was going to happen, which I never do. But I just had that picture. And then I walked in this restaurant, and I sat and I met with you, and I just let it unfold. That's what I did. And that's why we're having this kind of a conversation right now. And it blew my mind. I was like, wait, you can just plan how an event is going to go? He goes, not plan, visualize. I never know how an event's going to go, nor do I know how I'm going to even make it happen that way. He goes, I'm not making this happen in that sense. I'm not like forcing the issue. I'm just showing up. But I have visualized. I set an intention. That's what he said. I set an intention for how this night was going to go and how this conversation was going to go. And I had no idea you could do that. I said, you mean you can do that? He goes, you can do that with everything. You can visualize how you want everything to go, including your life. I said, is that you're talking about goal setting? He's like, no, it has nothing to do with goal setting. Because half the stuff that you're going to visualize, you have no idea how it's going to happen, nor do you need to know. All you need to do is visualize it and feel it in your being, and then let it happen. Show up. Just show up. And the things that you set an intention for will begin to unfold in your life. And that was a pivotal conversation for me. I'll never forget it as long as I live. I'll never forget it. And so what I began to do in my own inner work and as I was going through my own healing process is I learned to set intentions for just about everything. So most people are living life with a deficit of intention, right? They're not living with intention. They're just reacting to life. Most people, they get up in the morning and they grab their cell phone and they start flipping through, right? So they wake up without intention. They just react. Or maybe they're late for work or they don't want to go to work. And so they're just dragging themselves or they're, getting in the shower. Then they're just going to work and doing whatever they have to do, but they're just reacting. Or maybe they're just feeling, paralyzed and feel like they have a hard time getting motivated. So they just stay in bed a lot longer than they really want to. And they just stay in bed and kind of lounge or wherever. Maybe they're scrolling on their phone or just watching a bunch of movies because they're having a hard time getting motivated, right? So most people are not operating with intention. Most people in their relationships, right, with their partners are just reacting to each other. They're kind of taking each other for granted. Most people aren't really contemplating or setting an intention for their relationship. Most people are going to work and just doing what they need to do, doing the bare minimum. They're kind of reacting to what they have to do. But very few people set an intention for how they want their professional life to be that day. Very few people are conducting their business with intention. Most folks are being driven by reaction or fear, not intention. So if you want to change your life this year, learn what it means to create intention. Intention, not a goal, an intention. All you have to do when you wake up in the morning, it starts very simply. Visualize before you grab your phone. Just close your eyes as you're waking up and visualize what a perfect day looks like for you that day. Picture yourself going throughout your day, being productive, eating good food. Visualize yourself having really pleasant interactions with your partner, with your relationship, with your spouse. Picture accomplishments or picture yourself getting things done. All you have to do is visualize. It's kind of like a daydream, right? Where you're visualizing what you want to experience. You can do this in the morning. You can do this before every meeting that you go into. You can just picture how you want it to go. You can picture the kind of interaction you want to have towards those you love. Forget about how, you don't have to picture them doing anything. You can picture how you want to feel in those interactions. All you have to do is visualize it. Intention and setting intention is an art. Now, I've made it sound very simple, but there's a real art to it. And if you'd like to know more about that, let me encourage you to go to my website, which is jamaljavanji.com. And you'll be able to get a hold of me. You can have a look around my website if life coaching is something that you've thought about. One of the things that we get into in the coaching work is setting intention. But there's much more to it than that. But you can send me a message. Let me know, hey, this video on intention has really spoke to me. I'd like to know more about it. And I'd be glad to offer you some assistance this year. But this year, do not attempt to live with intention deficit. All right, let's cure ourselves of intention deficit disorder this year, and let's start to learn to have intention for every aspect of our lives and watch how life will go to work for you, bringing about the very thing that you intend to experience.